Be aware, be a voice, be a hero. Together we can do what we can't do alone. I'm Bill Murray, and I share hope.
Welcome to I Share Hope, the podcast where world leaders share their real stories of hope and how you can use actionable hope to start changing your life today. And now, here's your host, Chris Williams.
All right, sir, I can hear you now.
Now you're in a car.
I am in a car. So, okay, there we are. There we are. Is my video back up? Yeah, I'm on the road today. And so I'm making this work.
Okay.
Tell me this.
Jeez, I went to great lengths to add some production value to my shot, and here you're in a car. Good grief.
Are you feeling ripped off?
Yeah, man. Where's the quality of that?
You know what's funny is what I thought was awesome production value, and I'm sure I get made fun of for what I do sometimes, but what I think is awesome production value, people just seem to love real and authentic, and man, this is as real and authentic as it gets. I'm just glad to be talking to you and glad to have technology that can let me pull over to the side of the road on a business trip and actually get something done.
RI, speaking professionally, RI has become accustomed to accepting almost any quality of video, even back to back to back, and that happened during the days when documentaries became comfortable to us in kind of a format that we enjoyed. After that, the sky's the limit. They almost any format and get away with it now.
Yeah, and that's the truth. It's kind of great for somebody like me who has to be out and about. So some of these calls are in hotel rooms, sometimes in a park, sometimes in my car. It was too hot to sit in the park today, so it's 91 degrees where I'm at in Nashville, Tennessee today, and way too hot to be outside.
I don't blame you at all.
So, California, man, how's it feeling today?
California's dream. It's a bright and sunny day. It's probably around mid-80s. Yeah, life is good.
Wow, that sounds great.
I had a great Father's Day. I have a daughter who was able to spend several hours with me, and that's unusual. She and her friend came over, and they spent about 5 hours here, so that was wonderful.
Man, that's awesome. Good for you. Congratulations on a good Father's Day.
Thank you.
Well, let me tell you how this works. We've talked through it again a couple of days ago, but I think it's pretty straightforward. There's 5 questions that we ask each guest, and I'll ask you the same questions. You answer them however you want. There's no script for you to follow on your side, and this right here is about as much talking as I do. So I definitely have the easy job, and you're the one who gets to help us learn and share your story so that people like me can grow from it and say, hey, there's a guy who's actually made it through some tough stuff and he's come out maybe better for it on the other side. At least
I have more to offer because of the story anyway.
All right. Well, so Bill Murray, I am glad you're with us today because you're helping a lot of people. And for those of you who don't know who Bill Murray is, we will get to his contact info, websites, all of that in a minute. But this guy has been doing hope sharing for decades on a radio show that he produces. And there's a long story to how that all came about. It's really amazing that he's been willing to give up so much of his time and money and effort, blood, sweat, and tears, really, to make this thing happen. So, Bill, before we jump into all that, tell us where you are, what you do now, kind of what's going on in life, just the real deal stuff, and then we'll get into our 5 questions.
I've just recently semi-retired. Well, I've taken early retirement, and I think I got my first Social Security check last month, so it's just started.
Nice.
And it's and I have some savings. I'm fortunate enough to have had a career where I was able to put some savings aside. But you're right, the advocacy I've taken on in the last certainly 15 years and more has cost me a lot. And I've had to live in recent years off of the savings, and it wasn't intended to be spent. It was supposed to be for later in my life. But anyway, for a while I'll be comfortable, and this will be the mission of my life, pretty much, to offer hope, frankly, to a couple different kinds of groups. But the main group that I'm working with now, and probably will be the core group for the rest of my life, will be adult survivors of child abuse.
Wow.
And I am one of those. I am an adult survivor of child abuse, and I'm privileged to lead a grassroots group that we're not incorporated yet, but run what I thought was going to be a North American effort. It's turned out to be an international effort because when I put things on the internet and spoke English, everybody in the English-speaking world found us. So we have now really an international presence, but it's primarily North American membership of self-designated people who call themselves members of the NAASCA, N-A-A-S-C-A family. And National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse is, of course, what NAASCA stands for. The website's at NAASCA.org, by the way. This group has, I'm very proud to say, about 30 things, 30 different projects that they've developed over the last several years that are all free to the public. And we have a singleness of purpose, and that is to discuss issues of child abuse and trauma. But we do it from two perspectives. One, by way of educating the public, because we know there's a terrible taboo about even discussing or acknowledging, what we know is a really dire situation for a huge percentage of today's kids. Mm-hmm. So that arm of what we do is an educational arm. We're trying to get the public to be willing to even enter the discussion about what we think should be a priority issue. Mm-hmm. The second part of what we do is reaching out to adult survivors who have not yet experienced what we've experienced, namely recovery or healing or hope, and we offer them that. And we don't have a specific type of healing that we offer. We offer them all. So we talk about ministry, psychiatry, therapy, counseling, life coaches, 12-step programs, nonprofits that have their own, everything we can think of. And we include techniques like EMDR and PTSD therapy. And, we also share that some people get a lot out of art therapies, some get a lot out of writing and so forth. We think that the best combination is to have a single person that you can go to who you can really trust, and a group, because one of the real terrible dynamics of the child who's abused is they grow up thinking that they're unique and alone, and and they're ashamed, and that they're broken, they're embarrassed, they often feel guilty that somehow they brought this upon themselves. And of course we know that the child is completely innocent. It's always the adult in these situations, that's at fault. So we offer hope whether the child was abused, the adult now, was abused as a child sexually, physically or violently, emotionally or mentally, or through neglect or maltreatment, or any combination of them. If they brought trauma to you as a child and you've not, if you've not found a path to recovery, we want you to know that there are plenty of them and we'll help you find it.
Wow.
And so that's the hope that we offer. And we all come from that place of once feeling just the way a newcomer to our organization is feeling. We know how they feel.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. That's really strong. There's, in my research, as a survivor of child sexual abuse, I'm finding that there's a lot more females, a lot more girls talking out about this than guys. And I don't honestly know why, but man, thanks for being one of the guys who's stepping up. Maybe it's a pride thing, or it's not tough enough or strong enough. There's a lot of cultural dynamics in this thing. But anyway, thanks for jumping in and being brave.
Well, I made a decision when I first launched it that this wasn't going to be just for men. It's for every person of every. Child abuse touches people, as you probably know, very well know, from every walk of life, and both sexes and all ethnic backgrounds, different social strata. Doesn't matter how much money your parents made or how educated your family was. Doesn't matter if you're urban, suburban, or rural. Child abuse is something that affects a tremendous number, percentage-wise, of our kids, and it's not something you leave behind. It's something that often the most frequent model is a child will be traumatized, and somehow they'll understand, or they'll be told to keep it a secret. And they'll because they were traumatized once, be more apt to be victimized a second time by perhaps another predator or a different kind of trauma, or multiple times by the same predator. But the point is, once they're damaged, they are damaged, and they're easier for the next person that comes along to kind of take advantage of them. You keep the secret generally until you're an adult, and even into adulthood. And the adult part of it is, a horror show, because you decide that you're going to be able to handle it by yourself in your own way, and it affects, of course, every decision you make, all the relationships you have, how you deal with your family, where you might live, the kind of educational background you have, the kind of people you hang out with, substance abuse, overeating, gambling addictions, any kind of, you know, abuse of substance or a obsession, can be involved here. And so the fact is, we sometimes deal then with the obsession or the problem. Like I went first to deal with my drinking problem. I knew I had a drinking problem, and at age 30, I was fortunate. I went to an AA group who, when I heard what they were sharing and realized I wasn't supposed to, I risked telling them my parts of my story, my abuse story, because that was one of the reasons that I drank like a fish from the beginning. And they let me share about it. And it was amazing because 30 years ago, they did not allow this in AA groups, generally speaking. They'd kick you out for talking about anything but your drinking problem. But mine said, we don't have this same problem, but we understand why it was such an issue for you and why you drank so heavily, and you've been drinking heavily for a number of years now. And there might be people coming in behind you who need to hear what you're saying, so you keep showing up and you keep sharing. Well, they gave me a path, in my case, not only to heal from the drinking and the using of drugs that I was doing, but also because they gave me a forum to talk about the issues that I'd kept a secret for so long, a beginning forum at least, to let the secret out. Well, that's the transition, in my belief, between being a victim and becoming a survivor, is finding an appropriate situation where you can share your story in a trusted, environment, hopefully with people who are themselves perhaps in recovery too, and maybe further along than you, but they can share back, tips and techniques and tools that you can use. Maybe this is with a therapist, could be with a minister, could be in a group dynamic. But the idea is that first sharing is a burden gets lifted, and you realize you're not alone, especially if you do it in a group. All these other people are here talking about similar things. Oh my God, I thought I was the only one. And over time, if you apply those tools, in my case, the 12 steps, over and over and over, but if you apply them, your life gets better. It does get better. It's not an instant fix. It takes real work, but you can feel a dynamic within a relatively short period of time where the burden that you thought you'd always have certainly gets lifted, at least the bulk of it early on, but then you become more and more comfortable with yourself. So this is my measurement of whether recovery is working effectively as a progression. It's not a thing you do and you're done with, but it's a lifestyle, and it's measured in progress, not in being perfect. So over time, have I made progress? If I've been here and I go here and I step back here, well, that's still progress. 3 steps forward, 1 back. And if I look back and over any length of time, can I say my life is better than it was? Well, yes, and that's consistently been the case for 32 years, I guess it is now. And my mark, as I started to say, of whether I'm doing it right is long, long time ago, just a little while into it, really, I started to feel comfortable inside myself. And that was a very strange concept for me. But so I mark, healing and recovery as, am I comfortable living in my own skin? That's what I get out of recovery. And the more I do, the more comfortable I am, of course, the more effective I am in the world. And the 12 steps, as probably people who are listening know, end with the suggestion that we share what we've learned with other people, that we be of service. So that's the 12th step. And so it was natural for me to begin, sharing in AA first, of course, but ultimately in the public safety world where I started my real advocacy, and then later in the world of adult survivors of child abuse, trauma, and so forth, my own story and my own, in public, which I'd been sharing for many, many years in private or in groups or one-on-one whenever it made sense. In fact, I spoke at conventions, but I never went on the radio or on television with it until, I was actually, for me, my parents were deceased, and I had made a promise that although they weren't my molesters, that it had hurt them so much to find out what had happened to me, that I would wait until they were gone to go public. And so it was the fact that my father had passed away and my mother had gotten very severe Alzheimer's that I I knew I was ready to do this particular advocacy.
I'm glad you're doing it. That's for sure. Okay, so here you are, 32 years into sharing your story. So, and Hope, let's knock down the 5 questions, man. So, question 1, and you're one of 1,000-person survey we're doing around the globe, is I'm getting ahead of myself. What's your definition of hope? Your favorite quote about hope? How are you going to define that word?
You know, I saw that you were going to ask this question, and I don't have one expression that I use. I use a lot. I've already used that we're as sick as our secrets, or I mentioned that concept. I really do believe that's really important for people to hear, because by the flip side, we're as healthy as we are willing to reveal ourselves, in an appropriate setting. If you take your story in the wrong place, and that I did too, you can be taken advantage of. So by all means, you have to make sure you're in, the right situation. But the revealing of your story is really important, and that's the beginning of the offering of hope. But hope is, for me, that comfort. I mean, the lack of calamity, and even when things go wrong, and they do because life goes on, there's no sense of calamity anymore. There's, okay, I had the stove, blow up the other day, and okay, we turned the power off because it's an electric stove, got a guy over, he figured out it was what it was, and we may have to get a new stove. Oh, well, but you deal with life on life's terms. You don't blow your own gasket. And unless you learn this, you're like a pot of water on a stove with a lid on it. If you turn the stove on and you leave it there and walk away, there's only 2 things that can happen. Either the water boils so quickly that it explodes, the top comes flying off the lid and the water goes all over the room, or if it stays there long enough, eventually the water completely evaporates, and what happens is the pot melts down on the burner. That's it. So I say, go turn the burner down, or turn it off if you can, but turn it way down, because it's much less likely to either blow up or melt on you then. So I don't have a specific kind of cool expression or anything. I have one on the website at NAASCAA.org. Let me see what it says. I didn't remember what it says. But I occasionally do come up with some slogans and so forth. Be aware, be a voice, be a hero. This is a call to action for people that come to our website. Be aware speaks to the knowledge base that we all can acquire if we learn the topics and issues of child abuse, prevention and intervention for our kids, and then recovery for adults. Be a voice. The child, as I said before, can't speak, won't speak, and shouldn't speak. We should not expect a child to speak. Only 1 in 10, by the way, in childhood get help, which means 9 out of 10 of us come into adulthood keeping the secret and determine that we're going to handle this by ourselves, But in recovery, we eventually come to a place of comfort, and that's where I say a person in recovery to that degree is ready to be a voice. And I don't ask this of people in early recovery either. So the child, I don't ask it of. The person that's not in recovery yet, I don't ask it of. The person in early recovery, I don't ask it for. But the person who's comfortable now and got something out of recovery, I say, we must be the voice, because there are so few of us who are really that comfortable enough to share our story. Well, we try to provide forums for that, just as you're doing, so that the story can get out. Because it's up to us, this small little percentage of people who in recovery is comfortable enough to recognize that, as horrible as our life story was, it becomes useful in recovery because it's what we have to offer others. It's why I have experience that matters, and it's easy for someone who's a child abuse victim, an adult child abuse victim, to realize I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's like that, to reach them, and then be a hero. Well, a lot of us come into this advocacy saying, well, if I write a book, or if I do such and such a work, or I share my story, and only one person in the whole time I do it gets something out of it, it'll be worth it. Well, we affect thousands, but we don't meet them. Almost, it's very infrequent that I get sort of direct confirmation I get it occasionally, and I really appreciate it, by the way, if anybody's out there and wants to write me a little note, but a thank you, or your words really meant something to me, or I really got a lot out of it. And I know that's happening, but the heroism is about yourself. It's about recognizing that that your self-esteem is so far different than it was when you got here. Because that's again one of the hallmarks of the disease, and the problem we have is we're crushed when we come to recovery. And in recovery, we heal to the point where we have this self-esteem about having revived ourselves and having something to offer others.
So I'm going to summarize real short because I think you've answered all 5 questions already. Question 1, no, don't be sorry. I'll take all I can get, man. This is good stuff. But I think your real definition of hope and what you're really focusing on there is it's the absence of calamity, not the absence of a problem or a bad day, but the absence of something like your stove blowing up and the rest of your world blows up along with it, because you have space. If you have hope, you have space, you have a direction, you have targets, you can actually begin to find a path. And
I got to tell you, though, Chris, it also involves accepting that I'm human for myself.
Yeah.
I always thought I had to be perfect, and I don't. Today I know I do have character defects and shortcomings that are going to emerge, time and again. But I just don't participate in them as much as I used to, and I try not to participate in them at all. And when they do happen, for example, I get depressed every now and then.
Sure.
My depression now lasts a matter of a couple hours or maybe a couple of days.
Yeah.
But it never lasts a couple of decades like it used to.
Yeah.
And it was deep depression back then. Today, it's even in the middle of it, I know, okay, I got to get myself up the couch, and there's a few things I could do, and by doing them, I can work my way out of this. I know that from my own experience. And so even the depression that I occasionally feel isn't that terrible.
That's good to know. That's honestly just personally good to know, because it still comes and goes for me, and
Sure.
I wonder if feeling that stuff for a couple of days or sometimes a week is bad, but I'm glad to know. Okay, so
That's okay. Yeah.
question 2, who shared the most hope with you in your life so far, up to today? Who has been a great giver of hope for you?
It's really been a fellowship. It's a group of people. It's not a one individual thing. As I say, I went through AA, and I did Alcoholics Anonymous alcoholically, if you will, at the beginning. I really did it. I was desperate for recovery. And in that time, I'll tell you what, most of the people that shared things with me that were useful, I will never remember who they are. I will never remember. They said something in a meeting. They shared with me in coffee afterwards. I read something that they wrote. Or some of my sponsors were very, very helpful to me. So there's no single individual. And I think that's another reason I try to do the group thing. This is not the Bill Murray show, the show you say I do all the time. I've done 1,500 episodes. But I hope there's never a sense that it's my show. It's not my show. It's our show. It's your show too, Chris. You're coming on too. And it's the NAASCAA family that puts on a show. And I'm honored that I'm still considered, as the founder, I'm still considered the spokesperson and the leader. But I hope that's also temporary. I would love to find the right person or couple people to emerge to take over my role, or the roles, break it up, and do it, because this is something that it's a shared experience. I have, numerous very dedicated people, completely unpaid, all volunteer, from all over the English-speaking world, most of them from North America, and a few from Europe, who are very dedicated to NAASCAA, and without them, we couldn't do what we do. So it's a group effort.
You're not the first who said that, and that is really encouraging to me, that it is a community, no matter where you are, who you're hanging out with, finding a healthy group of people and some healthy friends, work, an AA group, community project, whatever it may be, a family member. It's important to have community. You need somebody to lean on, and better yet, a group of people to lean on, because sometimes we can wear one person out. I think my wife has expressed that a few times, like, "Whoa, not sure I can handle all this." Wow, and it's good to have a great community, because it is tough for any one person to support you, and it's great to have people to spread out among. All right, question 3, kind of tell us what was going on. Paint the picture. When was that time when you didn't have a lot of hope and it was really hard?
Well, I mean, I was first abused at 11 years old. I'd grown up in a family. I was adopted into a family where I had this sense that they didn't understand me, and I kind of knew why. I felt because I was adopted, I wasn't genetically there, so they were a little different genetically.
Yeah.
I was, for example, a creative person dying to get out of myself, and my parents were like more like business people. They strove to be higher educated. They both got college degrees on their own. My father was a businessman. He would have been happy if I'd have become a banker, or an insurance salesman. I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to sing. I wanted to act. I wanted to produce and direct, and I did all those things, but not with their help. They didn't help me. So anyway, they sent me off to a summer camp, and at 11 years old, I met a person who gave me that kind of attention at first. He was a photographer. And for the first time, he showed me his dark room and his big Nikon cameras with the long lenses and all kinds of adapters. And he printed his own pictures and developed them and all that. And I was in heaven. But he also turned out to be interested in me, and he molested me actually, he was the camp counselor for the swimming activities, and I was a big swimmer. And he did what Sandusky did in the shower when I was 11. Reached over my back and reached down and grabbed onto my groin. And well, that was to continue for 3 years without my parents knowing. So for 3 years, I was the subject of his prepubescent pornographic photographs, thousands and thousands of them. And I went back a month at a time each year for the 3 years to this summer camp. And at the end of which, he asked my parents if it was okay if I go on a vacation with him, because he was going to take 2 weeks before he had to go back to the school year. He's a teacher in the school year.
No.
And they knew him very well, because he had, we always talk about grooming. Well, he had given them legitimate pictures of me on horseback and me with face paint of an Indian and in a canoe, And so they said, that's a great idea. And they let me go on a bus from Virginia up to the Port Authority in New York, ostensibly to spend 2 weeks visiting Expo 67, which was kind of a World's Fair back then. And that was in month. So he met me in the station, and the 2 weeks turned out to be 2 weeks from hell. It was the first time he ever tried to get me to touch him or anybody else. He tried to share me with other couples, an older man and a young boy. He took me to many places I didn't know where I was. He exposed himself to me for the first time. None of this had ever happened. And I kept refusing to do anything, and he got more and more upset and angry and frustrated until we finally did drive up the last night. He stood me in front of some of the habitat and some of the other exhibits, took a few pictures, took me home on the bus, and sent me home.
Wow.
And
oh my goodness.
I never told. In fact, just 10 days later, I was due to go. I was I was brought up so Catholic. I didn't bring that up before, but I was very Catholic, brought up very Catholic, that I thought that the priesthood would be a possible option for me as a career. And I had asked my parents, and they had allowed me to visit 3 different seminaries, and I had selected one to go to as a high school student, a minor seminary, where I went 10 days later. And when I got there, I kept the secret. And one of the priests there asked me several times within the first month whether I'd ever had any what he called homosexual experiences. And I said, no. And the third time he asked me, I went into his room and I listened to him, and I agreed and gave him my confession. Well, that's when I told my story. All of it.
Wow.
In a confession, which is a sacrament, a big deal in Catholicism. And he gave me absolution. He gave me some things to do. And I thought, my goodness, thank God somebody, helped me. But he turned out to be interested in me.
Oh, my God.
And a few days later, he came on to me. He told another priest, who told another brother. And all through my story is about, almost all are priests and brothers. They're almost all clergy. But there were some lay people in there, too, who I was offered to, a few times. So trafficked, in effect. And it lasted from age 11 till well into high school. By the time I was a junior, let's say, in high school, the last 2 years, I think I'd had a growth spurt, and I was kind of ugly, and anyway, I was pissed off and bigger.
Wow,
they left me more alone.
Oh,
but
goodness.
But I took that story with me to college, where I drank like a fish, and that's
I understand. I totally understand the drinking. Oh my goodness, Bill, I'm so sorry. So, wow, I mean, what a way to wreck your childhood.
Yeah.
And those first stages when you're supposed to be learning something that's great and a blessing and a healthy thing in life, just to get your sexuality just wrecked.
Yeah, it was pretty confusing.
I bet. Oh my goodness.
I had a little problem with what I called the homosexual community. Well, you call it community, the gay people, the homosexual people, and with all priests. And I learned in AA early on. This is one of the things I learned early on, was that I really wasn't angry. In fact, one of the neat things about the way I recovered was I see it as being directed to certain places, if you want to say God's hand in my life.
Yeah.
I ended up getting sober in Hollywood, and about every third person in the room was gay. And they kept sharing their stories, and it kind of started to melt away, this prejudice I had. And I realized very quickly I wasn't angry at the gay community. I didn't know them. I was angry at priests who happened to be, at pedophiles who happened to be men.
Right.
And likewise, I wasn't angry at the entire Catholic Church, although I do harbor some resentment there too, for the cover-ups and so forth that we've since learned of. But I was angry at not all priests, but certainly the priests who had molested me, that group. And so those are two huge prejudices that I came into the program with that, kind of fell away and allowed me to allow them, those groups, their humanity too, their walk in life. And I have many, many gay friends, and I have religious friends all over the place too today. But boy, back then I was so confused sexually, like you said.
Yeah.
How come I never was attracted to a guy ever? How come they were all coming on to me? And I spent most of my 20s between, having gone to college and getting sober, and even into sobriety, to be honest, with a lot of women, a lot.
Yeah.
Because I just needed to prove my sexuality, and
Sure.
I proved it, but at the expense, and I make amends for that when I give talks to any women in the group who I might have offended. But it's quite a journey. Yeah.
Wow, it does leave you with so many biases, things that are confusing that you shouldn't have to handle when you're a kid.
Right.
Like wondering if the gay community is a molesting community, and they are not.
No, of course not.
They just, you're right, or a Catholic community, a molesting community, they are not. There's just so many lines that get crossed up when you're a kid and can't make heads or tails out of what the hell's going on.
So let's mention that there are predators in every community.
Absolutely.
Okay. And we're talking about every neighborhood.
Yep.
Every school district, every Boy Scout. The Boy Scouts, the place of higher education, as we learned recently.
Yeah.
Even in the Speaker of the House apparently has a past that included some of this. I mean, just every walk of life and every type of person, and there are so many of them, and so many victims. They, on average, have 70-something victims in their lifetime, each predator.
Wow.
Which is why it's so hard for us to get from behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
And but that's the statistic.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're a leader of any people group that has children involved in it, and you think that your group is safe, they are not, is the answer. If you have really strong child protection policies, and if you go to Bill's website, you can find more of that and resources for that. But if you have really strong child protection policies in place, your community is still not safe. It's just much less likely to be traumatized by a pedophile. But it really comes down to vigilance and intentionality of a community of adults to keep kids safe. It doesn't happen just because there's nice people around. Usually the people who want to go after kids are the ones who are the nicest. They are the person you think is the greatest person around.
Correct.
And
they work hard to make that persona.
They do.
Present.
Yeah.
Sure.
You have to have access to kids to be a pedophile, so you have to be a great person.
And naturally gravitate to careers or volunteer opportunities that have lots of kids in them. They don't molest every kid. The soccer coach doesn't molest, the leader of the guy that plays the front line. He molests the water boy, or even worse, the kid that's hanging on the fence looking through, wishing that someone would tell him it's time for him to play. That's the kid they go after. Not the quarterback, but the water boy, right?
Yeah.
And I just want to mention before we run out of time that we do stress 3 aspects to this, which are prevention, intervention, and recovery. The first 2 of which really speak to the group of kids that are at risk today, and
All
they're
right,
adult activities.
This is gonna be answer number 4, because this is.
Okay.
I know where you're going, and this is, unless you have another
Sure.
answer for 4, but this is
No.
totally a great. How are you sharing hope today? And
Sure.
I mean, I know where you're going with this. This is brilliant. So this is how you can share hope in this child abuse prevention and recovery scenario. Fire away.
Well, we have, as I said earlier, 30 different free programs, and I want people to know this because they're all geared to do this. But they boil down to, for example, the wearing of a blue ribbon, which I should have worn today. I'm sorry I didn't think of it. We recommend wearing of a blue ribbon. It's the symbol of child abuse awareness, and that's just because it's an opportunity then when someone says, "What's the blue ribbon for?" to say, you know, I'm a person that share as an advocate for child abuse awareness and answer their questions. But anyway, we think in terms of 3 basic, legs of a stool: prevention, intervention, and recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Prevention and intervention are really adult activities, though, that deal with children. We don't. This is not a child's activity. We don't ask the children to be responsible. The prepared adult will teach their kid, however, or any children around them, things like the privacy, the space privacy, the body privacy they have, what parts of their body are private, how to know the difference between a secret and a surprise, who to go to if somebody ever makes you uncomfortable, and lots of things like that. Those are all prevention techniques that you teach a child starting as toddlers, I believe. In fact, the first thing you do is you teach them anatomical body part names. As they're learning what their eye is and their nose is, you also teach them what a nipple is and a penis is. They don't take any offense. To them, it's a body part, and it is a body part. But later, I mean, nobody ever taught me that, so it became a wee-wee, a weird stuff. Intervention. That's an adult activity by which we learn what to look for in children who have possibly already been traumatized in some way. There's behaviors, most of them are behaviors, they're not so much like obvious scars. You're not going to see bleeding. If you see bleeding, call 911, that's violence. But most of the time, when you change, you're going to see a performance change, you're going to see there's contribution from my pet, you're going to see you're seeing attitude change in a child. And we have them in 2 categories on our site, the way we categorize them. There's some for younger kids and some for slightly older kids. And certainly up into the preteen ages, there are distinct things that they're not adolescents coming on. These are things that happen earlier. And if you see 1 or 2, it could be, just life. But if you see 2 or 3 or 4, and we have maybe 20 of them on the list, that's a cause for you to go find a little more out about the child. And as soon as you get a suspicion of child abuse, it's time for you to report it to the appropriate authorities. And like I say, if it's an emergency, that's a 911 call. But there are other places to call to get a child, intercession on a child. And that's an adult activity is the point. And not just their parent, but all of us. I mean, we kind of believe that every adult is responsible for every child because children cannot be expected to be responsible for themselves. That's ridiculous. They're innocent. And of course, the third leg is the leg I talked about earlier. I've already talked about that in recovery. That's offering hope to the still suffering now adult survivor of child abuse who maybe has spent decades. Some of them go, unfortunately, their whole life. Many of them do. Not understanding that all the other problems that are going on around them have been created out of this trauma because the trauma is the foundation that they live their life from. So you have, like, your house is on a broken foundation, a crumbling foundation, and you're trying to put an addition on it. That doesn't work. So we go back and we say, deal with this core issue, and you'll be much more prepared to deal with all the rest of your life. But if you haven't dealt with this core issue, we're not surprised that you're still suffering. We were too, So prevention, intervention, recovery.
Prevention, intervention, recovery. Great synopsis of those 3. Question 5 then. Maybe apart from this subject, or stick with it if you like. Again, it's your talk here.
Sure.
How can I begin sharing hope, or how can I grow in hope? And there's a lot of people that listen. So what are the simple ABC steps to begin growing in hope or sharing it with a neighbor?
I guess I didn't read question 5. I'm not prepared for this in the same way. Well, I mean, I'm not
Good.
prepared.
I want it off the top of your head because it'll be good. That's great.
No, I'm an extemporaneous speaker, so I'm good at this. I'm pretty good at this. But anyway, I think, I grew up in a family of volunteers, and it was a Catholic family. But even in the sort of secular world, we got involved in things in our community. My mother was a librarian by trade. She put herself through school so she'd have a library science degree and went back to teaching as a librarian, research librarian. My dad did all kinds of activities, many of which were working for some of which were working for nonprofits like churches and charities, but others of which were outside his work life, where he volunteered for things like the Knights of Columbus and the Exchange Club and these kinds of activities. So this was my model. And I believe in that model. I believe that, we're supposed to give back. And I always have believed that. But I got kind of jaded in my own self-attention on my own life, and how poor is me. I mean, they have an expression in AA, pour me a drink. That's what the expression is. And I had to get over that. And having come to the other side, it really is, as I said, one of the culminating parts of the program that goes on and on and on, it doesn't stop, is this concept of being of service. That I don't know why I got the gift, and I call it that, of recovery given to me. But I know that now that I recognize it as a gift, I'm supposed to pass it on. I'm supposed to reach back to somebody that's behind me and say, I know how you feel, because I used to feel that way too. And you're going to be okay. Not only me, but come in here, and there's a whole bunch of us, who are all sharing our story. We've done 1,500 episodes of the radio show, and at least half of them are special guests like yourself. You're scheduled for a upcoming show, who tell their story.
Yeah.
We have a huge library of these,
Wow.
and you can go back and click on any one, and it plays. So, and we have a constantly growing library of these 6 nights a week. So, it's really. The combined effort, the communal effort, the grassroots organization is really important to me. There's nothing official about it. We have a membership that's open to anyone who self-designates themselves as a member of NAASCAA and our family.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So sharing your story and being part of that community. Going back to step 1, or our first question, that the community, the second question, who's giving you hope, it's getting in that community. You got to be the first one to open your mouth and say, I want to be part of the community. Awesome.
One of the neat things, though, let me just say, one of the neat things about being in recovery is this is not, I don't believe that I'm special. I'm special because of the work I do, and like I say, I get the self-esteem from that work.
Sure.
But I give the credit to in my case, a higher power, I guess I would call it. But I give it the credit to the group. The group is the most important thing. And I have to be a contributor to the group. It's why NAASCAA is the way it is. Again, it's not the Bill Murray show. It's not the Bill Murray organization. It's the National Association of Adult Survivors of Child Abuse. It's a communal effort. And I want the sense to be that we need to come together, because we can't do this alone. But together we can do what we can't do alone. And that's an expression you might use as a slogan for me. Together, we can do what we can't do alone. I really believe that.
Boy, that's awesome. I believe that too. Wow. Okay, Bill. So contact info. How can we reach out to you? Facebook, Twitter, social media, websites. Just kind of lay it all out there so we can jot it down.
Well, we have all of that. I'm better at some than I am at the other. The first thing I'd mention, of course, is the website. Again, it's NAASCAA, NAASCA, S as in Sam, NAASCA.org. And there you'll find hundreds and hundreds of pages and thousands of resources and articles and so forth, constantly updated every day.
Awesome.
And by the way, the original site was the LACP site, the Los Angeles Community Policing, and that goes back 15 years.
Wow, that's great.
It's been constantly updated too every day, so if you want to look that up just as an aside, LACP.org. And then I have, I'm known throughout the internet as B Murray 3RD, B Murray, the number 3 and RD, because I'm William J. Murray III. So B Murray 3RD. If you do a search on LinkedIn, you'll get that. On Facebook, you'll get that. But we also have, a NASCAA page.
Yeah.
So Facebook.com/NASCAA will get you to that. We have a fan page for the radio show, which is only one of the 30 programs, 30 projects, by the way. We do 30 other things. We have a Twitter account. The Twitter account is NASCAA Official. That's the name.
Okay.
At NASCAA Official, I guess. We have a blog now. Together We Can Heal is the blog's name, and that's all of these are attached at the bottom of the front page of the website. If you want to click through there, you'll find we have a few videos we've made, and I'd like to do more of that because my background is in film and TV, and I'm a filmmaker and an editor by trade, and so eventually we'll do more of that too. But right now we just have a few things. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, man, that's great. We'll definitely put those on the show notes page or the interview page at isharehope.com/Bill Murray, or just click isharehope.com and you'll find all the guests, and you can track down Bill Murray there, and we'll have all those links lined up in case you're out for a run and didn't get a chance to jot those down.
Let me make one more note for you, because again, this is not the Bill Murray show, okay? We have on our contact, when you click on the contact button on the front page of the website, there's a list that drops down of at least a couple dozen, maybe 3 dozen, I don't know, names of people who put their name in the public domain with their phone number, their email address, a little bit about them, because they are willing to put their name in the public domain and their phone number.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want there to be a time when someone out there can't reach someone to talk to. So it's these people who are the contact list. Of course, we do use my phone number as the main number, but you can talk any of these any time. You can tell some are male, some are female. You can tell where they're from, a little bit about them, and they're all eager to help however they can.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Wow. Okay, so let's do this, Bill. It's a few minutes before we have to hang up here because I know you got a show and I've got the next interview to do as well. So let's get a few quotes from you. I'm going to clip this stuff out right here. So let me just see my timer. It's 46 minutes. Okay. So I need you to say, I'm Bill Murray and I share hope. Or I'm Bill Murray and the quote you mentioned a second ago and I share hope. Whatever you'd like to say, that we're going to put that at the beginning of your episode as we introduce this show so people know who's coming up. So I'm going to hit mute and you can do all the audio work you want.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's just a single phrase, that's it?
A single phrase, I'm Bill Murray and I share hope. Or you could say, I'm Bill Murray, and you mentioned some really cool quote a second ago and said we could use that as your statement.
Together we do what we can't do alone,
Yeah, that's an awesome quote. Yeah, if you want to say that in your name and I share hope, or however you want to put it together, you can do a couple of versions. We'll just take the best one.
You want the phrase I share hope in it.
Yeah, at the very end, your name and I share hope, yeah.
Be aware, be a voice, be a hero. Together we can do what we can't do alone. I'm Bill Murray, and I share hope.
Man, I don't think there's any reason to do a second one. I love talking to people who aren't scared of the microphone, and that's great. All right, now I think, man, tell me this one random question here that I just have. Well, I guess really two. If you're going to listen to some music and you want to just kind of get your brain back in gear, feel great again, and get out of the slump, favorite band, favorite song. Take a random shot.
I love music, period. I don't really, jeez.
You listen to everything?
I'm not listening, absolutely, to be honest, I'm not listening recently to music. But I love music. I'm a musician myself.
Yeah.
What
do you play?
I play guitars and bass. Yeah, I play stringed instruments. I play guitars and bass and stuff. Yeah, and I sing. I mean, it's my parents, like I said, did not understand my interest in the arts.
Yeah.
But the voice came with me, so they didn't have to get me an instrument. That instrument came with the body.
Yeah.
And I sang from when I was young, every type of music I encountered, and I love them all.
That's awesome.
I've also appeared on stage, and I've been in musicals, and I've been in bands, and but that was my first instrument. It wasn't really until college.
Bill.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know what happened, but I know you got a show like in the next minute or two, and so do I. Another.
No. I got one in an hour from now.
Oh, okay. I got you. I've got one dialing in here in about 60 seconds. So you're in these bands. Have you been in bands before on your instruments?
Yeah.
Dude, you're in
mostly,
LA. That's
mostly
awesome.
bass,
Yeah.
voice first, bass, guitar, yeah, and drums. I played drums. Actually, my first instruments were drums, but I don't count them as an instrument.
All right.
Yeah.
One last question before you go. So you live in LA. You've lived there for quite a while. Coolest interaction with a movie star? Who have you bumped into? Just pick one. Does it happen very often?
I walked across the street with Kirk Douglas one day. That was kind of cool.
Helped Kirk Douglas
I
across the street.
I was waiting for the light to change, and I looked next to me, and there he was. So we walked across the street together. Yeah.
Hey, there you go, man.
It happened.
Yeah.
It happened. Yeah.
Hey, Bill. You've been awesome. Thanks so much for your time. I'm sorry I have to rush off, and I know you've got a busy evening, but thanks, man. And I look forward to being on your show, your team's show, and it's a privilege to talk to you. Thanks for what you're doing.
Anytime, if for any reason I can help, just call me, okay?
Thank you, sir. All right, man.
All right.
Bye-bye.
God bless. All right. Be well. Bye-bye.
You've just listened to I Share Hope. If you're ready to make a change, head to our website at isharehope.com and claim your free copy of the Top 10 Actions of Hope from World Leaders to use hope in your own life. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.